Hello once again everyone, and welcome to the Sanguine deck list and review video for set 12/13. Just a little bit of a reminder for everybody. I have about 10 subscriptions left before I hit 100. I'd like to hit that before the end of the year, so we have about a month and a half, so if we could get that soon, that would be awesome. This is going to be the third video coming out for the deck lists and reviews, and I still plan on doing Departed and Wasteland after this, and I'm maybe one or two more after that, but I'm trying to at least get the core archetypes done. So let's get to the deck list first, and then we'll go from there. So this is the deck list I'm going to be starting with, and then I'll go from there as far as what I might want to cut or change or replace. Sanguine is not a very high meta deck, so there's a lot of breathing room for you to be able to try your own things and swap things out and whatnot. So by all means, do not take this deck list as gospel. You know, if you don't agree with something, that's totally fine. Just try your own stuff. Just trying to help, you know, people take the new cards and kind of try to splash them together and start from somewhere. So let's list off the cards because they're a little small, so you might be not able to read the card names that well. We got 3 Disciple of Lust, 3 Wings of Lust, 3 Moonrise Werewolf, 3 Liberty Werewolf Pup, 3 Sanguine Necklace, 2 Valneric Omen of Lust, 3 Zealot of Lust, 3 Alucard Time Worn Vampire, 3 Blood Moon, 3 Laura Crimson Strife, 3 Argavi the Berserker, 3 Hazan Demon Blade Knight, 3 Demonium Clash Devil, and 2 Dark Feast Bat. The evolved deck is 3 copies of Alucard Time Worn Vampire, 2 Liberty Werewolf Pup, 2 Hazan Demon Blade Knight, and 3 Moonrise Werewolf. So the function of this deck is to have multiple ways to either ping yourself for 1 damage within one card, such as like Wings of Lust, or have multiple cards that have a way to ping yourself for free later on, such as Sanguine Necklace or Blood Moon, or just cards that sure might cost like 2, but you could at least ping yourself 2 or more times, like Zealot of Lust. The other thing I wanted to mention that's in this deck is the Beast Engine. So with Blood Moon, you can tutor beasts out of the deck, and so things like Moonrise Werewolf, Liberty Werewolf Pup, and Argavi the Berserker and Dark Feast Bat are all able to be tutored by Blood Moon. So that's the other kind of like small engine in this deck I just wanted to clarify. One little thing as well I do want to mention with Dark Feast Bat is he synergizes really well with Argavi the Berserker and Demonium Clash Devil, because if you activate Sanguine with Dark Feast Bat, then Argavi's free to play and Demonium Clash Devil is also, well, not free to play. Neither Argavi or Demonium Clash Devil are free to play, but Dark Feast Bat does give you back 3 play points, so then you can play those 2 and continue your turn and do more damage. And that's not even including if you already had 1 spare floating play point, so you could actually play Hazan Demon Blade Knight for 3 and then evolve him for 1 more. So if you know these cards at this point, you can probably hop off or click on the link to the deck down in the description and check it out on shadowshowdown.com. But if you are not totally sure on why certain cards are used or whatnot, then feel free to stick around as I'll go through the card by card analysis for the deck. First up is Disciple of Lust. It's a 1-cost 1/1 that on Fanfare you deal 1 damage to each leader, and then on Strike you deal 1 damage to each leader. So I run this card because obviously it's a 1 cost that deals damage to yourself, so it's as cheap as it can pretty much get. And if you let it stay on the field for more than just 1 turn, it can activate Sanguine for free. So, you know, it kind of fits in that whole category I was kind of referencing of having cards activate Sanguine for free in some way, shape, or form. Next up is Wings of Lust. It's a 1-cost spell that says you can choose 2 of the following, and you can either choose to select a follower on the field, give it rush and deal 1 damage to your leader, or select an enemy follower on the field and deal 2 damage to it and 1 damage to your leader, or deal 1 damage to your leader and draw a card and discard a card. Usually the 2 effects you will most commonly use is the deal 2 damage to an enemy follower and damage to yourself, and the deal 1 damage to yourself and draw a card and discard a card. I don't think I've ever actually had a situation where I've wanted to give a follower on my field rush, but I suppose you always give it to Disciple of Lust to have her rush into something to also deal yourself a damage for more self-burn, but that's kind of more rare and not the norm. Also, just one more thing I wanted to mention with this card, you have to activate the effects in order of how they're listed, so you don't have the ability to say, you know, deal damage to yourself, draw a card and discard a card, and oh shoot, you couldn't draw into like some card destruction card, so now you'll decide to deal damage to yourself to deal 2 damage to an enemy follower. You have to kind of do them in order. So if you do want to deal damage to an enemy follower first, then that means you are not giving the rush ability to a follower on your field. It's not something that happens frequently, but it can kind of potentially happen with the draw a card, discard a card, because with the new information, you might want to kind of, in your mind, retroactively choose something else and go back and decide if you want to give a follower a rush or deal 2 damage to an enemy follower on the field, but that's not how it works. So just make sure you choose the right order correctly when you play the card. The next card is Moonrise Werewolf. It's a 1-cost 1/1 that evolves for 1, and on evolve it becomes a 2/2, and its on evolve effect says you can select an enemy follower on the field, and if Sanguine's active for you, deal 3 damage. So it's also a beast follower, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, so you can grab it with Blood Moon, and even on like turn 3, let's say, because let's say you play Blood Moon on turn 2, on turn 3 you could just play Moonrise Werewolf and pay 1 more to evolve it and, you know, control the board. Unlike my older Sanguine builds that were much more aggressive, this is a little bit more of a control / like mid-range build that needs to get more into the late game, so you can do things like Dark Feast Bat and other multiple effect cards that you can do all in one turn. So Moonrise Werewolf kind of fills the Do Blame Duke and Dame aspect of the deck, where it's a little bit of control where you can deal 3 damage and then worst case rush this into some other follower. Next up is Liberty Werewolf Pup. She's a 1-cost 1/1 as well, and she evolves for 1 as well. And Liberty's on evolve effect says if Sanguine's active for you, give your leader 2 defense and draw a card. So she's a little bit more of a resource gain instead of the board control like Moonrise Werewolf. So kind of 2 opposite sides of the same coin, as far as the same coin being a 1-cost follower that evolves for 1 into a 2/2. The alternative card that this could have been was Kiss of Lust, which was a 2-cost spell that let you heal 2 and draw a card, and if Sanguine was active for you, it would let you draw another card. But Liberty kind of fulfills that advantage resource engine aspect while also giving a little bit of board control, since she gets rush with evolve, and then you still at least get 2 life and a card. Granted, it's not an extra card, but it's still, I think, a little bit better than Kiss of Lust in that regards. And because you can also tutor Liberty, it's kind of like a tutorable Kiss of Lust, so it's a little bit weird in that regards as well, that it feels like for this deck, for all general intents and purposes, she just kind of fits better with the deck better than Kiss of Lust. Next up is a card that I was oddly very excited for. It's Sanguine Necklace. It's a 1-cost amulet that says you can tap it and bury this card to deal 1 damage to your leader and draw a card. It's very simple, but still very flexible and helpful for the deck in general. Prior to this, there was Dire Bond, but Dire Bond kind of had the downside of when you played it, you would have to already take the 1 damage and draw a card. Where with Sanguine Necklace, you pay 1 to play it, and it literally does nothing, but you can at least just sit on it on the board for the subsequent turns, so you can play Sanguine activatable cards for no additional play point cost for that turn. So like something like Hazan Demon Blade Knight, instead of it having to be potentially like a turn 5 play where you pay 1 to activate Sanguine and then pay 3 to play him and 1 more to evolve, you could pay 1 for this on turn 1 and just sit on it until turn 4 and then be able to pop it and draw a card and play Hazan for 3 and then just pay 1 more to evolve him and get all his benefits. So he kind of gets your Sanguine activators going a little bit sooner, as long as you're just willing to at least pay the 1 play point early on in the game, or earlier in the game at the very least. Next up is Valneric, Omen of Lust. She's a 2-cost 2/2 that says while Sanguine's active for you, she has Storm, and then on strike you deal X damage to each enemy leader, and X equals the number of times your leader has lost defense this turn. So that also includes whether you pay for the life or if you took damage. And if your leader's defense is exactly 7, not more than 7, not less than 7, but exactly 7, she gets +2/+2. For the newer people, she's the one that kind of started the whole Lust package of cards that you'll be seeing through this video, and she's not a bad card, but she's just a little underwhelming if you don't have a lot of ways to activate Sanguine within a turn. But the whole point of this deck is to activate Sanguine multiple times in a turn, so then she fits in much better. Up next is the Zealot of Lust. It's a 2-cost 3/2 that says act. You can give your leader -1 defense and select an enemy follower on the field and deal it 1 damage, and you can activate this twice per turn. For a Sanguine activator, she is a little more expensive at 2 play points, but the fact that you're able to deal some damage to the board for board control and is 2 defense for 1 card, which there is not a lot of cards that do that, she does kind of get elevated above others because of that. I think she's overall pretty simple and straightforward card, so let's move on to the next card. Now, Aluzar Time-Worn Vampire might be a little bit of a confusing pick for Sanguine because when you read his effects, there's nothing that really seems to indicate that he'd be a Sanguine-related card. But however, his Blood Arts is the thing that is of relevance for this deck. So let's go over Aluzard first. Aluzard is a 2-cost 2/2 vampire that can evolve for 1, and it says at the start of your main phase, remove a dormancy counter from this card in your EX area, and if there are no dormancy counters on this card, you get to summon it for free. And his last words is you put him into the EX area and you place 2 dormancy counters on him. And his on evolve also keeps that last word effect, but also you do get to get a Blood Arts token in your EX area. The Blood Arts token says for 1 play point, you can deal 1 damage to your leader and give each enemy follower on the field 1 damage as well. And you give each Aluzar Time-Worn Vampire on your field +1 attack and drain. And then if you give him +3/+3 if there are 3 face-up evolve followers named Aluzar Time-Worn Vampire in your evolve deck, which is why I run 3 copies of it in the evolve deck because it's needed for the Blood Arts effect. So the Blood Arts token itself can trigger Sanguine because you're dealing yourself a damage, and then you're also able to heal up a little bit with the drain because Aluzard will get Rush upon evolve. So it's a good way to kind of, while you're losing life, also regain it back with Aluzard, and you get to play Aluzard for free once his dormancy counter runs out. The dormancy counter may sound a little confusing, but essentially what happens is when he dies, he gets 2 dormancy counters, and you basically can't play him for the next turn. However, upon the turn afterwards, when it's your turn again, you can play him for free. So it's basically every other turn you can play him. It is mainly his aspect of being able to activate Sanguine with his Blood Arts token and getting Drain to heal back is why I think he's a pretty good option for Sanguine this set. Next up is Blood Moon. It's a 2-cost amulet that says on Fanfare you can search your deck for a beast follower, reveal it, add it to your hand, and then shuffle your deck, and then you can act, bury this card, and deal 1 damage to each leader, including your own. This is the only card that lets you shuffle your deck to mix it back up in case your starting hand mulligan was a pretty bad one, so at least, you know, you can kind of mix back up, and hopefully if there's like a big clump of certain cards down at the bottom, it can get kind of mixed up and put more back up towards the top. And there's quite a few beast followers in this deck, so you can kind of pick and choose which one you want on the fly, and you can activate Sanguine essentially free for Blood Moon. So you could stack up a few different amulets between, like, let's say Blood Moon and Sanguine Necklace, and then you could always do like Valneric or another new card later on, Laura Crimson Strife, to kind of get a real bang for your buck turn and have it all just kind of trigger all at once in 1 turn. Speaking of Laura, she's the next card. I didn't look at the next card before I mentioned her just a second ago. So Laura Crimson Strife is a 2-cost 3/2 that says during your turn, whenever your leader loses defense, choose one that you haven't chosen this turn. You can either select an enemy follower on the field and deal damage equal to the number of times your leader has lost defense this turn. You can give this follower +1/+1, or she can get Storm. You can probably see now that because of Laura and Valneric, they kind of want to save several different Sanguine activators, especially with Laura, considering you can get 3 different effects with her, and you'll probably at least like do the +1/+1 and the Storm as one of the first 1 or second effects, and then with the first effect you'll probably do that last because that'll mean you can do 3 damage to some enemy follower. Next is Argavi the Berserker. He's a 3-cost 4/3 that on Fanfare you can pay 5 more additional play points to deal 5 damage to each other follower on the field, which does include your own field, and you give this follower +2/+2 and Storm. And then he also has an end of turn effect where it says at the start of your end phase, if Sanguine's active for you, select an enemy leader or enemy follower on the field and deal it 3 damage. Now, with different amulets being free to crack in order to activate Sanguine, you could crack, like, let's say Sanguine Necklace for free for 1 turn. On turn 8, if you do crack the necklace, you could pay 3 to summon him, pay 5 more to give him +2/+2 and Storm, and obviously do the whole board clear, and then have him swing for 6 total, and then at end of turn you could burn 3 more to your opponent for 9 total damage in 1 turn. He's also a beast, so he's easily searchable by Blood Moon, and he synergizes well with Dark Feast Bat, because if you have Sanguine active when you play Dark Feast Bat, you can recover back 3 play points, and then you can just play Argavi the Berserker to, at end of turn, also burn either a follower or the enemy leader for 3. Up next is Hazan Demon Blade Knight. He's a 3-cost 1/2, so a little understated, but he's still really solid. He can evolve for 3. However, if you have Sanguine active, he can evolve for 1 instead, and he has Assail, Bane, and Drain. And as on evolve, he becomes a 1/6, so he gets really tanky. He still retains the Assail, Bane, and Drain, but he also gains an additional strike effect that says deal 2 damage to each enemy leader and refresh this follower, and perform this only once per turn. Do keep in mind with the strike effect, the 2 damage to each enemy leader is also only once per turn, turn. So it's essentially going to be 2 damage to the enemy leader, and you'll heal for 2 with the drain, because on the first attack you'll drain 1, and then on the second attack you'll also drain 1. Next is Demonium Clash Devil. He's a 3-cost 2/3 that has Bane and Drain, and has a fanfare effect that says if Sanguine's active for you, give this follower +1/+1 rush and assail, and on strike deal each enemy leader damage equal to this follower's attack. Ultimately, he's meant to heal you by 3 and burn your opponent for 3, while also just taking out any potentially big follower, and if it's a smaller follower, he'll just stay on the board and be a decent threat. And also, because he's a 3-cost, if you do play Dark Feast Bat after activating Sanguine, you can get 3 play points back, and then just play Demonium Clash Devil for an additional card to play during the turn. And last but certainly not least, we have Dark Feast Bat. I finally get around to him after mentioning him so many times throughout this video. But anyways, he's a 6-cost 4/4 that says on fanfare, select an enemy follower on the field, deal 4 damage to it and its leader, and if Sanguine is active for you, recover 3 play points. Even outside of like Argavi the Berserker and Demonium Clash Devil, you could always play Wings of Lust for 1 and choose 2 effects to burn yourself for 2, and then you still have 2 play points left for something like Valnuric. So at the very least, Valnuric could storm for 5 damage between the 1 to initially play Dark Feast Bat's effect, and then the 2 more from Wings of Lust, so that's 5 right there, and that's not even including if you're at 7 life that you could potentially add 2 more attack and defense to Valnuric, but that's really more of an exception than the norm. But if we do go with that line of play at the end of the turn, you basically would be dealing 9 damage to your opponent between the 4 from Dark Feast Bat and the 5 from Valnuric, so that's a pretty solid turn to get your opponent down to almost half the play points that you start with. So that's the deck list and review, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe. We are almost at 100 subscribers at this point, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I usually check the comments pretty frequently and try to get back to you in a timely manner. So otherwise, have a great day, guys. Bye.